Welcome to Democracy 2.0 with, with Wayne Bouchard. Where's Bouchard from, Wayne?
French.
French, okay. And it's heard exclusively on MalcolmPresents.com, and I'm Malcolm Berman. And welcome aboard, Wayne. You wanted to make a opening comment about something that's very topical?
Yes. It's good to see you again. Let's see. I want to just get this one thing off my screen. There we go. I'd just like to start off by saying that, this entire controversy about Will Smith, Chris Rock, and what happened at the Academy Awards is just unconscionable, in my opinion, that we let this event take center stage when children are being killed on a daily basis in the Ukraine. How sick is that? There are things that can be said on both sides of the story, and it's just gotten way too much publicity. And as far as I'm concerned, we ought to dig a hole, put it in there, and cover it up and be done with it.
I tend to agree with you, but that's not the American system of television. This is sensationalism.
Yes.
And
what sells, that's what sells media today.
Right.
Sensational.
Well, just look at especially look at your local news. What does it head off with? Heads off with murders. If the first, I think 10-15 minutes of any of the local news is who was killed, how many people were robbed, what are we doing about the police? Because that's what sells, as I say.
Personally, I haven't watched local news in at least 10 years.
Oh,
Maybe.
okay. I'd watch all news.
Pardon?
I watch all the news broadcasts.
Oh.
I think I'm a news junkie, especially now. It's, news is on I think one of the problems, it's on 24/7. And some of the newscasters are there. They're making guesses of what's happening. Because they don't have any new facts.
Well, why don't we talk about something that is current, doesn't involve murder.
Go for it.
Pardon, it's about our Supreme Court, Justice Clarence Thomas, and the position he's been put in by his wife, Ginny, in all of her communications with President Trump's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, has really shined a light on the Supreme Court and ethics. And, there is no recourse. The justice makes his own or her own decision as to whether or not they would recuse themselves from a particular case. Clarence Thomas has ruled on the January 6th insurrection, and the general consensus of opinion from legal scholars is that he should not have, and he should have because of the background of his wife, and undoubtedly he's aware of that. Is it time for the Supreme Court to write a code of ethics that defines what behavior is acceptable and what isn't, and how justices should recuse themselves? I think personally that, if there is a situation where there might be some conflict of interest, the justice, and if the justice can't make his own decision or her own decision, they should, invite the entire court to make the decision for them.
Is there no guidelines or
No.
things written for the court, or has it ever been done?
No, there has, in all, and how many years, 200 and 32 years of our existence as a nation, we have never dealt with this issue. One Supreme Court justice was impeached a long time ago, and then that ruling was overturned by,
Which one was that? Do you remember?
no, I do not remember. It was insignificant in the scheme of things. And Justice Roberts, when he's been confronted with this, has said, well, we kind of police ourselves. Well, that's not a very good system, as we have seen in a lot of other areas. So I believe it's time that the Supreme Court writes a code of ethics, and then they adhere to that code of ethics. That's my humble opinion for today.
Uh-huh. Well, would they write their own code of ethics, or would it be self-policing, or?
Well, I think they could write their own code of ethics. There are 9 of them, 9 of the greatest legal minds in the country. I would think that they would be capable of writing a code of ethics.
I hate to disagree with you, but I think lately it's not sort of like 9 of the best legal minds in the country, which I don't want to get into the political aspects of the Supreme Court, but I think the last 2 or 3 justices that were appointed are not necessarily the cream of the crop.
Well, that's for another day.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you. Well, I also think that there should also be term limits on Supreme Court justices. For a lifetime appointments, that's sort of so ludicrous. It could have been good for, like the old world when they did lifetimes, when lifetimes meant that, that they were appointed at, 30 or 40 years old and they lived to be 60, or 65 was an old age. But now they're appointed at, 40, 50 and live to be 85. That's a long time.
I think changing that part of the Constitution would be difficult, and in the interim, maybe a code of ethics would keep us out of some additional trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we shouldn't attempt to amend the Constitution and change, the Supreme Court term from lifetime to, whatever the period of time that they agree to is, or that we agree to, it would be adequate. But term limits, that's a whole ball game that you could include. You can include senators and congressmen at the same time.
I agree with that also.
But that would take one hell of an effort.
Do congressmen have term limits? Are they termed down?
No, God, no.
And senators aren't.
There are some people that are in Congress, and I'm just going to take a wild guess here. I think there was someone who just passed away not too long ago that was 88 years old and had been there since the 70s. I mean, that's just incredible.
Yeah, well, as I say, when Congress is convened, you take a look at overhead. Nothing about people with white hair, but they're all people with white hair.
Well, if you were 88 years old and had been in the House of Representatives since the 70s, I would think by that time you'd have your own bathroom, your own private bathroom.
Well, you would need it.
Yeah, well, when you're that old,
when you're that old, you probably needed a little jar right by your seat.
Yeah, well, we don't want to get into that stuff.
Yeah, because I don't know if you could walk fast enough to the bathroom.
Yeah, the one of the other comments that we got from last week's show, our inaugural edition, was that people said a couple of people mentioned to me about Trump bashing, and I said, that's not the intent of this show to bash former President Trump. That's not our intent. When his behavior or influence has an integral part of our democracy and where our democracy is going, then we have to bring them up. But not, there's an entire, late night comics around the world all have fun almost on a daily basis bashing former President Trump. So, we're not going to try and compete with them.
No, it's well documented. But I mean, some of the things, what gets me is not necessarily bashing Trump, but the people that swear by him, that I don't understand.
Well, we could have a whole show on that, but
we can have a whole series of shows on that.
Yeah, probably we'd get up to season 14 episode with 10 episodes per season.
Right.
The other thing that was brought to my attention, and you brought this up, Malcolm, was the whole issue of elitism and how that affects how that elite attitude is trying to affect our voters, and voter integrity and voter frauds brought into this whole thing. The early days of our country and the Constitution, I mean, it was thought that only landowners should have a right to vote. And I think we've progressed a little bit further since then. One of the things that I'd like to bring up, being a former New Englander, is, they have in New England and in some other states also, but mainly in New England, and this started back in the colonies, they have town meetings. And in those town meetings, landowners, and initially it was only landowners, and then they allowed, voters to be involved. They decide, they can decide issues of grave importance in a community in a town meeting. And I have been personally involved in a couple of these situations where, you can go around and knock on doors and get a bunch of people to come out for your particular cause at a town meeting and win. And, that's really democracy, at the basic grassroots level. And, I used to love that stuff. It's, I think some of the elitists on, and I'm going to go to the other side of the spectrum, and I'm going to have to mention Trump supporters. They think they're better Americans. They're more patriotic, and they're really the pure American. And that's why they are, jerry-rigging all these election laws so that to keep other people from voting. It's the old white male syndrome that they want to control the elections. And why? Why do we want fewer voters? Is that really our goal?
Well, I think the goal of the philosophy of the Republican Party is that the more voters there are, especially minority voters, will be in favor of Democrats, and they will vote the Republicans out. I think that's a theory. What I heard is that we're opening up the border, to get all these undocumented workers in here and alien, so to speak, aliens, because they're going to vote. And of course, they can't vote if they're not citizens. But they'll be voting illegally.
Well, what's the definition of a good voter, a better voter?
To me, To me, a better voter is the good voter is an educated voter. I mean, thing that I'm disappointed at with, I mean, most voters, I would say, I don't know a percentage of, they don't know what they're voting about. They don't know the candidate. What they've heard is 30-second sound bites on television, on radio, that's been written by professional writers to gear the to make them vote for their candidate, and that's why you have at the end of it, if you notice any campaign, the last 10 seconds is you'll have a voice, and I endorse this, by the candidate himself. Why does the candidate say that at the end? Because if his voice is there, then they get a special rate for advertising.
Yes, yes. But who is to make these decisions? Are we going to give out IQ tests?
No, IQ test, but what we need is an educated populace, which starts at public schools, improve the education. You have to start someplace. I think the more educated somebody is, the more he's able to, look at what's behind the headlines. Hopefully.
Yeah. But we should ask ourselves the question, shouldn't we as a nation be
all of a sudden you're freezing, so I'm not sure what's happening. Let's wait a few minutes. We're supposed to ask ourselves as a nation.
You can vote on your phone. What is there to fear? What are we fearful about?
To vote on your phone?
No, by restricting or being defining who can vote and who can't vote. What
they're afraid of is what's happening right now, as far as that's concerned. That we had a presidential election, and the former president is still going around saying how he was gypped out of the presidency, how it was all rigged. In fact, he had it rigged before the election took place. He said, if I lose, it's rigged. He lost, therefore it's rigged.
Right, but you, on the other hand, are exactly the opposite of them. You want to restrict, voting to the level of the person who's not really aware of what's going on politically.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that the populace should be educated, and they would become aware. I think this was the original inception of democracy at when the Romans held court.
And that was the original conception of the New England town meeting, where everyone would get together and decide how they were going to run the government.
Right, and everybody had a stake in it, at least the local government. Everybody had a stake in it because this was their community.
But there were instances in my lifetime where you could kind of pack the court, so to speak.
That's what they did. They did pack the court.
Well,
and not the traditional sense. Well, actually, yeah. I mean, because when they didn't allow the Obama nominee even to get a vote, even to be considered.
That was because of the majority that the Republicans held in Congress.
Right. Yeah, that was Mitch McConnell. But yet he said no, they shouldn't. They shouldn't vote when it's the last term of the president. But yet, when it was it was the final when Ruth Bader Ginsburg retired. They did the vote, I think even before they switched presidents, they had the vote.
No, she retired, or she retired. She passed away, right?
Yeah, not retired, passed away.
Yeah, during
even before they had the funeral, they had put the new Supreme Court, the new justice, the Supreme Court justice in there.
And are you going to sit there, Malcolm, and tell me that the Democrats wouldn't have done exactly the same thing given the opportunity?
Well, I'm going to say that we don't know, but he's the one that set the precedent. Yeah. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah, but I think both sides have abused that privilege of having the majority at a time when the White House was of the other political party.
All right.
So
I mean, I think
let's look at what's going on right now. The Democrats are in control of both houses of Congress and the White House, and they can't get anything done.
Well, saying they have control of both houses of the Senate and the House of Rep is sort of like a misnomer. They have one slim majority in the Senate, but yet they can't get two of their senators,
it's still
the
a
Democratic
majority.
senators, to go in. So they're not really in control.
Why did all that fail? I think Senator Manchin, I think the other senator, and I apologize, I don't remember her name, probably could have been convinced if it hadn't been for the fact that Senator Manchin was holding out. But this is a perfect example of the Supreme Court decision on now it just escaped me.
Well, to me, Manchin held out because of talking about conflict of interest.
Well, he's supported and funded by the energy industry.
Right, by the coal industry. He's a head of a company. His major contributions are the coal industry. And then the thing is, with the coal industry, even if they were mining coal anymore, it wouldn't be the union members. It would all be controlled by, it's automated now. So half of the workers.
I know what I was getting at was, the Supreme Court decision on Citizens United that allowed corporations, said the corporations are equal to being people and they can contribute to political campaigns. And that is what is destroying this nation, because, it's not just Senator Manchin. We can criticize the hell out of him, but how many other senators and congressmen are being funded by businesses that are important in their district or their state? And, there's nothing that we can do about it, because you and I could donate all kinds of money, unless you're, somebody like Zuckerberg or
George Soros
or one of those guys. But, we can't compete with the likes of the energy industry in terms of, Senator Manchin held the whole thing hostage. The mistake, I believe the mistake was made when they unbundled all this stuff and tried to pass two different bills. They should have just made it one bill, all or nothing. And then he would have been given no choice but to vote in favor of it, because we would have had the infrastructure bill together with everything else.
Well, that's what the ultra left wing wanted.
Yes.
But then it was promised that we get the infrastructure passed, do that separately, then we'll get the bill back better. And then that didn't happen.
And then the president, God bless him, he had this preoccupation with the old ways. He still believes, and I think he still believes it today, that you can get a bunch of people in a room, slap everybody on the back, have a cigar, a couple of beers, and we're going to pass legislation. And it doesn't work that way anymore.
Not anymore.
You can't. You could give the Republican Party all the cigars and all the beer in the world, and they're not gonna listen to you.
Well, that's one.
Democracy is a very delicate balance, and it's a volatile process. And right now we are in a situation where we can't agree on anything.
Well, now the big question I have is democracy working?
Well, I think the jury's kind of out on that whole thing.
I think we said,
What could bring us all together? Did this killer virus, COVID, did that bring us all together? That was a common enemy. We could have united around trying to defeat that. No, we had all kinds of fake news and debunked theories about vaccinations.
Vaccine, face masks, that brought us further apart, I think.
And
Well, right now, about the only thing that might be bringing us together is a Putin and his attacking of Ukraine.
That could have, something, could have a positive influence on the American people, but the political parties, we still see the far right criticizing the president, talking about, and I heard this the other day, someone questioned whether or not Joe Biden has the intellectual capacity to deal with world leaders on a crisis such as this. I mean, that's a hell of a doubt to throw out there. And did you see President Trump's remarks the other day about Putin and the Bidens?
Elucidate.
Yeah, it was unconscionable. When never in our history has a former president attacked the reigning president in a time of crisis. I don't believe it has ever happened. I don't believe that it even happened in the days of Jefferson, Adams, and those folks, when they were always feuding with one another.
Well, I don't know if you've ever listened to Fox News, but you listen.
Try not to.
Okay, well, I listen to, since I do shows about politics and what's happening in America, I want to see what the other side is saying. And if you listen to that, they not only say Biden is incapable of dealing with the world leaders, they say Biden is incapable of going to the bathroom himself. Mm-hmm. I mean, that he is led around in all his policies, or controlled by somebody else, and they even throw Harris into the mix. That she's not doing the job. That both of them are being controlled by the far left. And I don't see it, because they're not making anybody happy. They're not making the far left happy. The only one who I see, which is funny because he's probably the oldest, is Bernie. He's still out there fighting.
Fighting for what?
For what he believes in. For the legislation that he wanted, for the Build Back Better, for immigration policies, for and that's a whole another thing we could have a show, because I'm not sure what's happening with the immigration system, but for Build Back Better, for climate control, for money into that, to get rid of fossil fuels. I mean, Bernie is still leading the bandwagon, but how old is he? He's 79, or did he hit 80 yet?
I'm not exactly sure. I haven't heard that much about him recently. I think it, from my perspective, I think it's imperative that the country unite behind the president, no matter what your political party, no matter what your political beliefs are, or your personal opinion of his capabilities. And this is the most serious crisis that this nation and Europe has faced since World War II.
I agree.
And to have people questioning whether or not he has the capability of dealing with these people. He appears to be handling himself just fine with NATO, with the European Union, and they're all united in this common cause to stand behind Ukraine and to defeat the Russians. And we've got people here in this country nitpicking at these things.
Yeah.
That's unconscionable.
Yeah. I don't know if I mentioned it.
Borders on treason that this happens.
Yeah. I don't remember if I mentioned it last week on this show, but when I saw President Biden come out to that meeting with NATO in Brussels last week, he had forcefulness in his step. Yes. He was standing erect. He was walking with purpose. This was his milieu. He was in control. Anyway, on that note, I hate to tell you our show's ended.
Okay. I think that President Biden has shown us that he can unite the European Union, NATO, and democracies around the world, to try and create this new order.
I totally agree with you.
Except here in his own country.
As you say, I think there might be treason in our country. Anyway, under that note, it was a great second show. We'll see you next week. We'll further debate of what's happening in this country and what's happening with Clarence Thomas and whether he should be, recuse himself, and maybe he will. I doubt it. But that's it. I'll see you next week. We're listening to Democracy 2.0, heard on MalcolmPresents.com with Wayne Bouchard as our leader. See you next week, Wayne.
Thank you, Malcolm. Take care.